Hi, everybody. I'm Freda Payne, and I'm here to talk about my life and my whatever I do, exploits, hobbies, what I'm doing now, what I did in the past, and maybe even a bucket list that I may have. Well, let's start off from the very beginning. I was born and reared in Detroit, Michigan. And that's where it all began. My mother, Charcelie, and my dad, Frederick Payne, they were married, and then it was in 1941. Matter of fact, it was the December the 7th, 1941, and at Bethel AME Church. And this is history because the day they got married, while they were getting married, Pearl Harbor was being bombed. So that's something you can never forget because that's part of American history right there. But I guess Pearl Harbor being bombed was a bad sign. Should have been a red flag because that marriage didn't last. My mother divorced him when I was 3.5 years old, and so it was me and my younger sister Sherry Payne. Sherry is like 2 years my junior, and so there we were. There she was, a married woman who became a single mom because she was taking care of both of us. And then she met a man by the name of Sam Farley. Uh, I guess a couple of years after that. It was at least about maybe 3 years, about 3 years after that, because I remember other little thing, another person that she dated. I remember this one person, and I won't name names, but anyway, my mother met my stepfather. They got married when I was 6, and the rest is history. They stayed married for many years up until my mother passed away. My mother passed away in 1977, unfortunately. And that was traumatic for me because when she passed away, I was 4 months pregnant with my first and only child, and she had never seen or had a grandchild to that point, and I was totally devastated by all of that. But going back to the beginning again, I'm getting ahead of myself. Um, my musical experience came about, I would say, through my grandmother's influence and also my uncle, my mother's brother. His name was Johnny. We called him Uncle Johnny. And Uncle Johnny, when I think back on it, became a huge influence on my life in terms, I'm talking about the artistic part of it. It was he's the one that had this huge record collection. And I remember I'm going back as far as me being, mm, let me see, I would say 3, 4 years old. And he'd be playing this music at my grandmother's house. And I would listen to it on the record player, the record player, and I would put my ear up to the speaker because they didn't have stereo back then. We're talking about in the 40s, okay? Because I'm really up there. I'm in that age bracket. This was in the 40s, and I would put my ear up to the speaker, and I'd be listening to Duke Ellington's band. I'd be listening to Lionel Hampton. He also had a lot of classical records, Bach, Rachmaninoff, Serge Rachmaninoff. I'd be listening to Tchaikovsky and all those, different classical works as well. So he had jazz, BB King, uh, I think Bobby Blue Bland a little bit. Maybe Bobby came a little after that. But anyway, there was jazz, blues, and classical. And then my grandmother had a piano in her house, and it was like a spinet. And I remember playing on that. And then my mother bought a eventually bought a baby grand, the first baby grand I'd ever played on. And by that time I was 6, maybe 7 years, 6 or 7 years old. Well, anyway, when I was 6 years old, my mother she took me over to the Detroit Institute of Musical Arts, to have piano lessons. And I studied the piano. We only stayed, she only kept me there for like maybe less than a year because I remember having one recital. So it wasn't longer than a year. It was just 1 year. And there was one recital. And, and then after that, she hired this lady. Her name was Ruth Ann Johnson. And Ruth Ann Johnson, she became my regular piano teacher, and she also gave piano lessons to my sister and I, both of us together. So I think it was every Tuesday, once a week, she came to the house, and we had our piano lessons, and that continued for like at least a good 7 years. And every year there was a recital. So, wow. I remember by the time I turned almost 12, she said, Freda, for the next recital, I'm gonna have a ensemble group comprised of six singers, and these were all students of hers, piano students, by the way. And she said, I've never heard you sing. Now, in addition to that, my sister Sherry was the outgoing one. Sherry was the one who wanted to sing and perform for people who came by the house. She'd say, do you want to hear me sing? And then she'd sing a song and then maybe do a little dance. And then when she finished the song, she says, you want to hear another one? And then and then I was the one who was very reclusive, and I was extremely shy. I was very shy, and I would never do that. I was never that kind of person that was overtly, you know, outgoing like my sister Sherry. Sherry was the one. She was very cute, and very smart. She was smart in school and all that. And I remember Sherry was the one who was the little entertainer, and they'd say, "Well, where's Freda? Can Freda sing too?" And I wouldn't sing for I wouldn't sing for my own mother unless I was standing behind the door, and then I would sing. So one day, like that day came when Ruth Johnson said, Freda, I want to hear you sing because I want to see if your voice is good enough to be in this ensemble of six people. And the song was called June is Bursting Out All Over. Well, I sang. She played a little, I don't know what song I sang for her, but I sang something, you know. And maybe I'm trying to think. Well, I'm not even going to take a stab at it because I might be wrong. But anyway, I sang for Mrs. Johnson, and she said, "Oh, Freda, you have a lovely voice. I want you to do a solo." So she gave me a song to learn. It was called "Stars Are the Windows of Heaven." Very adolescent song, but back then, at the age of 12, it was okay because nowadays a 12-year-old is like way advanced. But anyway, back to that period of time, I sang at the recital and also sang with the ensemble as well. Well, afterwards, my mother's friends came up to me and said, and to my mother, they gathered around me and they said, "Oh, Charsa Lee, we didn't know Freda could sing like that. We thought it was just Sherry." And so my mother said, "Well, I guess something happened and she changed her mind that she wanted to sing." And the rest was history because after that, I got my confidence up. I started to enter talent contests, in and around Detroit. And then I auditioned for a television show that featured a talent contest, and it was called the Ed Mckenzie Dance Hour. Now, Ed Mckenzie was like Dick Clark's American Bandstand that came on every Saturday afternoon. But this was Detroit, just for Detroit and Michigan and all like that. I think it was WXYZ or some WXYZ TV. It was Channel 7. I remember that. And the station was located in a big office building right on Woodward Avenue, right over by Wayne State University. So anyway, I auditioned to be on that TV show, and they accepted me. And then the night before I was supposed to do the show, I had an epiphany. And I told my mother I didn't want to, I had auditioned to dance. That's what it was. I had auditioned to dance. I wanted to be a dancer. I studied dance. I had ballet. My mother gave us ballet for 2 years from the time I was 11, 12. And I think Sherry was only 10 years old at the time. So I was 12. And, uh, and then I loved dancing and I wanted to be a modern dancer. I guess that was how I felt. I auditioned to dance on the Ed Mckenzie's dance hour, but changed my mind at the 11th hour, and I said, "Mom, I want to sing." So I picked out a song. It was called "Too Young to Go Steady." It was a record that we had that was done by Nat King Cole, and that's where I got it from. It's called "Too Young to Go Steady." Nat King Cole had recorded it. Anyway, my mother called him and said, "My daughter changed her mind. She wants to sing instead, and she's pretty good at it." And they approved it. I sang and I won. 6 months later, they called to bring me back to participate and be on the contest again. The second time I came back, I sang That Old Black Magic and I won. So then after that, I was really feeling good about myself. I thought, well, wow, I must have some talent. I must be something. So I'm like 13. And I remember being on that show at the age of 13. And I remember Sammy Davis Jr. was appearing on the show as well. He was the star because they would always have a celebrity star who was appearing in the Detroit area at that time. And he was appearing at the Elmwood Casino, which was located in Windsor, Ontario. That was just across the river from Detroit. And so he was on the show. And we actually after I won, we took a photo together. And I still have that photo. And it featured in my book, by the way. I have a book. I wrote I finally got around to doing my memoirs. And the book is called Freda Payne. I mean, I'm sorry, it's me already. It's my memoir, but it's called Band of Gold, a memoir by Freda Payne and Mark Bigo. So maybe I might be able to, I'll have to get up and get it, but I'll maybe get up and show you a copy of it. But let me move on with my conversation. So I won the contest twice. And then after that, I was approached by Berry Gordy Jr. Yes, the original founder and creator of Motown, the Motown record company. And the they a lot of stars from Detroit came out of Motown. Well, what happened was Barry at that time there was no Motown. He had not come to um, establish the Motown label yet, and he was married at that time to Ray. They call her Ray Noma, and she was so delightful. She was such a talented woman herself, and so Barry started writing songs for me, and he wrote 4 songs. One was called Father Dear, and then the other one was called The Moon Rock, and then one was called The Applications for Love, and then the last one was called something. You give me a star. Anyway, after all that happened, Barry wanted to manage me, and we actually went to New York. We drove to New York and with a guy who was at that time a business partner of his. His name was George Kelly. All this is in my book, and we drove to New York, and that's when Barry, I think, had a meeting with Morris Levy of Roulette Records, and after that, that's when he really got serious about managing me, and uh, and I remember he and my mother going back and forth and arguing about uh, this and that, about percentages, about what a manager can get or not get, and who pays for what, and this and that. And afterwards, my mother just decided that it wasn't the right thing for me to do at that time, because by this time I was only 14. I was 14 years old. And she just didn't agree with some of his business terms. So they never could resolve it. And I didn't sign. My mother, well, I was a minor then. I had to, like, I couldn't just sign something. When you're a minor, there are certain rules and regulations that apply. Anyway, my life went on, and then by the time I turned 17, I got an opportunity to audition for Duke Ellington. Now, Duke Ellington's, he and his big band were appearing in Detroit at the time, and they were at a theater. They were performing at this theater. I think it was called the Riviera Theater on. Oh my God, my memory sometimes fails me, but it's in my book. And I auditioned for Duke Ellington, and he wanted me to sign a contract to be his band singer. And that contract was for 10 years. Now, as it turned out, he was very sincere and he really wanted me. But I wound up not signing that contract because after examining it, and we had a neighbor, our neighbor, he was good friends with my parents. His name was Alan Early Jr. He was an attorney in Detroit, matter of fact, well-known attorney, and a very good one at that. And he read it and he said, "Well, we need to tweak this a little bit and change little things." That's when you have a contract. That's what you do. What's the point of having a contract if you don't read it? And if there are things you think should be altered, there's nothing wrong with that. We call it negotiating. So he didn't want to change anything. It was sort of like similar to Barry, but that's the truth. That's what really happened. So after a while, and then of course, I eventually it didn't stop there because he wanted to hear me sing with the band. And he said, if your mother or someone, your dad can drive you to Pittsburgh, where we're going to be appearing next, I would want to bring you up on the stand and let you sing with my band. He says, that's how bad I want, I really want you. And that's what happened. We drove. It was my mother and I and a guy named Mac Ferguson. Mac Ferguson had become a person who worked with me, mentored me, coached me, and we actually worked a couple of little um, spots in Detroit. And I was underage too. These were like clubs. They sold alcohol and all that. So I got away with it. And so Mac joined us in the car with my mother and Sherry. I think, did Sherry go on that trip? No, Sherry didn't go on that trip. But we we drove to Pittsburgh, and the band was booked there at the Holiday House in Pittsburgh. And so he brought me up on stage, and I sang, I think I like two songs, maybe three songs with the band after that. And then also during that period, that I remember that afternoon, um, he said, I want you to meet someone. And so we were walking outside in the courtyard, and this man comes walking towards us, and he introduced me to the man who wrote Lush Life and A Train and a lot of other songs. And I'll tell you who that is later on. But I got a chance to meet some of the other men in his band, and then he wanted me to come to Vegas as well and sing with him. And that man that we met in the courtyard was Billy Strayhorn. Billy wrote Lush Life. And by the way, Lush Life is like one of my favorite songs that was one of the songs that was featured in a musical that I've done. And that musical, I've done about 6 companies. And it's a Broadway musical called The Blues in the Night. And I performed in The Blues in the Night, like it's about 6 or 7 different times. The first time was here in Los Angeles, downtown at the Los Angeles Theater Center. And then after that, we did it in Japan. Yeah. And then we did it at the Seattle Repertory Company in Seattle. Wow. And then I did it in San Francisco with Maurice Hines and Carol Woods and Paulette Ivory. And oh boy. And then we did it, here, right here in LA at the Pasadena Playhouse. So I've done my share of Broadway shows. Well, okay, now let's see, where am I? I'm at the point in my conversation. Oh yeah, I'm just talking about that point where I was 7. I'm still at 17. Also, while I was 17, I auditioned to be in the review with Pearl Bailey. They were in Detroit at the time. They were touring, and it was Pearl Bailey's review. And my the man I told you about, Alan Early Jr., the attorney who was our neighbor, he was at a cocktail party where he met Pearl Bailey's road manager, and his name was Bob Bailey. No, and by the way, no relation to Pearl, but his name just happened to be Bob Bailey. And Alan told him about me, and he said, "Well, you know what? We just had our one of our singers just dropped out, just left the company, a female alto singer. So maybe she can audition for that part." I was just 17, so I didn't even know. I didn't even think I'd even be hired. So I went to the audition, and they hired me. And then I was a day later, 2 days later, I was on the bus, and we traveled to Cincinnati and then to New York. And whoa, that was my first real experience being on the road with Pearl Bailey. That was very interesting. Yes. So after that, I was 17 years old, and then I decided by the time I turned 18, I decided, I said, Mom, I want to go to New York. I'm 18. I thought I was grown then. By the time you're 18, they say, they kind of like, that's the age where they say you are in a way kind of grown, that you're old enough to kind of be on your own. So I went to New York to live, and I had a roommate. But before I had a roommate, I checked in at the YWCA in Manhattan on 8th Avenue and 50th Street. And that's where everything kind of changed for me. I was in the big city, and it was like, you're on your own, kid. Well, I wound up being introduced to Sidney Bernstein. I got my first agent by the time I turned 19, and he was an agent at a big agency called GAC. And matter of fact, he's the first agent to bring the Beatles to this country. And Sidney Bernstein is the one who was instrumental in getting me my first record deal. So I got signed to ABC Paramount when I was 19 years old. And I recorded for Paramount, ABC Paramount, and then they put me on a jazz label called Impulse. Impulse. I mean, John Coltrane was on Impulse, and Duke Ellington too, and a lot of jazz artists. And my first album was called After the Lights Go Down Low and Much More. Big band. And then after that, I remember going to Europe for the first time in 1965. Oh, Lord, I'm dating myself. And I stayed there for about like maybe 6 or 7 or 8 months. And I recorded an album in Stockholm, Sweden, and that's called Freda Payne in Stockholm. Well, let me see, what else do I want to talk about? I talked about my book, and I want everybody to know that if you want to get the book, you can order it on Amazon, or you can go to my website, fredapayne.com. Band of Gold, that's it. Freda Payne and Mark Bigo. Let's see, what else would you guys want to know about me? Oh, wow. Let me see. Oh, how am I coping with the pandemic? Well, you know what? I coped with it, and I did test positive back in the end of December of this of 2021. And but I had, you know, it was very mild. I didn't even know I had it because I'd had my two vaccinations, and I was really surprised, and a booster. So that's what. But I'm fine now. I've been testing negative since then. So you know how it goes. But wear a mask now and then. I noticed, like when I travel on the plane, I noticed some people are wearing masks and some people aren't. And when I go to the supermarket, I usually like to put a mask on. But I see a lot of people now that are not wearing their mask. And, this virus is still going on. Oh, okay. Okay, I just recorded a new single. It's called Just to Be With You. And it was produced and written by Michael Sutton. Michael Sutton used to be with Motown, very talented man, and working also with Anissa, his wife, Anissa Sutton, his wife, and she's a very talented lady as well. Um, what haven't I done that I would like to do? Well, I have never starred on Broadway. I would like to star on Broadway. And I have been on Broadway, by the way, but I was an understudy to Leslie Uggams. This was back in the 60s, 1967. I was on Broadway as an understudy to Leslie Uggams in Hallelujah Baby, and I went on 5 times. So I can say that I have performed in a leading role in a hit Broadway musical, and I performed that role 5 separate times. So in a way, I have done it, but I just want to I want to have a show of my own where I'm the star and it's my show and I'm doing it like 8 times a week. I hope I can hold up to that. Let's say be careful what you wish for. You see what else? Any other questions? Let me see. Uh what advice you received from an older musician? Who was that musician and what did they tell you? Oh my God, I don't want to tell you that. Any advice you want to give to younger musicians to keep them encouraged? Advice, first of all, like I said, anything that I've been told to me as advice from an older musician, like I said, that gets kind of personal, you know. Uh, as a female, I think they would tell you almost something that your mother would probably tell you, to, be discreet, uh, uh, don't believe everything you hear, always keep your morals, don't sell yourself cheap, um, always, always beware of people who are trying to, let's say, fool you because they're trying to make money off of you or they're trying to maybe take advantage of you, especially I'm talking about women now, females, because when you're young and unattractive, or sometimes you're not even attractive, but you're just talented, and that makes you attractive. You have to be careful of who you decide to, go into business with. Okay, let's see. Tell us about how you navigated different styles of music and how you feel when you got hits during the. I felt great. I love navigating different styles of music because I feel that why should you be stuck in one genre in one vein? That's like being in one cubicle. I like to jump from cubicle to cubicle. Uh, I like to do cabaret, Broadway, jazz, R&B, blues. I couldn't help but do all that, especially how I came up because I was exposed to that. I mean, I would go into a club and hear a blues singer. I'd go to hear or see Joe Williams with the Count Basie Orchestra, or somebody like that, or Ruth Brown or Linda Hopkins, people who sang blues a lot, and I would hear them, and that would get into me, into my soul. It would speak to me, and this was part of the cabaret crowd, and the people, that the real people that wanted to go out and have a good time. And I just listened to all of it, and I listened to classical music as well, but I made my money off of doing more, like, let's say, R&B, especially after I had my hit record Band of Gold, and then I had Bring the Boys Home a year later. But then I also was able to sustain my career by singing jazz. So sometimes you can last longer in your career, and you can go further if you open up and broaden your horizons, and not just do one thing. Okay, you could be touring in Europe anytime soon. No, right now, I had some bookings in Europe before the pandemic, but they got canceled. And right now, we haven't rescheduled those tours yet. But I do tour. I go to the UK a lot, and I've been doing a lot of work over there in the UK. Also, I was in Australia. I think 219, was it 218 or two? It was 2018. I was in Melbourne, Australia, at a place called Birds Birds Basement. Yeah, and with Ralph Armstrong, bass player Ralph Armstrong out of Detroit. Am I still going? Well, anyway, um, let's see. What else can I talk about? I can talk about my recording. I did a CD, a new album. I love Ralph Armstrong too. He's so funny, and he's one of the best bass players in the business. I put him up there with Christian McBride, who's also a good friend of mine. And and I still haven't done Christian's radio show on Sirius XM, so I'm just wondering when he's going to invite me. And I love Christian McBride, but I love Ralph Armstrong as well, because we're both Detroiters. Yeah, and Gail McKinney on the drums. Yes, Detroit. That's my hometown. So I should be going back there soon. Oh, also, I want to talk about my album again. My album was executive produced by James Michael Getz, and the main producer is Rodrigo Rios. I did duets. Rodrigo got me to do a duet with Johnny Mathis, with a big band and strings, Dee Dee Bridgewater, and we did two songs together, and that was Moanin' and Doodlin' with big band, arrangements done by Gordon Goodwin. And then I did a duet with Kenny Lattimore. Kenny Lattimore was fabulous. I love Kenny Lattimore. Now, he's another artist who broadens his scope, his horizons. He sings in different variety styles. He can sing R&B, little jazz. He can sing classical. I was shocked when I heard him sing classical music. He can do it, and in German, no less. And then there was Kurt Elling. Kurt Elling is the baddest male jazz vocalist out there. So it was Johnny Mathis, Kenny Lattimore, Dee Dee Bridgewater, and Kurt Elling. And the title of the CD is called Let There Be Love. And like I said, it was like quite an experience. And we recorded it all here in Hollywood, at Capitol Records in Studio A. So Let There Be Love. That's my that was my last album. And then of course my new single is called Just to Be With You, produced by Michael Sutton. Well, this has been really interesting. I'm so used to doing interviews where there's somebody talking and telling me and asking me different questions and all that. And Gail, I just want to thank you for your reaching out to me and wanting me to do this particular segment. It's been fun. And, when you hear people talking and they just keep going on and on and on, well, this is one of these occasions where you allowed me to go on and on and on and on. And I probably left a lot of stuff out. But what can you do in 30 minutes? Thank you. I hope everybody is well and be safe, be careful. Uh, don't take any chances. Just take care of yourself, live your life, and God bless you all.